Thank you guys all for joining us today. Today we're going to be doing a walkthrough of In Residence 19, and we're joined by a lot of the artists here. Just to quickly share about In Residence and the residency program. The residency program offers a dedicated studio space where artists can refine their craft, exchange ideas, and expand their practice while also being in community with each other. This specific edition focuses on artists who investigated memory, material history, and their transformation of personal and collective narratives into new forms. So I'm going to start off with Katie's work. If you guys would mind joining me over here. Just to quickly introduce, Katie Mongoven is a fiber artist, and she's been with us for 9 months. She's a current resident, and her studio is in the first studio, so after this talk, feel free to pop in and ask her more questions. So she's been with us since December, and then, yes, as I mentioned earlier, this August is her last month. And she's been here 9 months total, but yeah, I'll turn it over to her.
Hello. Hi, my name is Katie. I'm coming from Detroit, Michigan. And I am a fiber artist, and my practice for the past couple years has been sourcing these blue and white porcelain vessels, mainly off of eBay or thrift stores, but specifically secondhand. And I'm very interested in the idea of the blue and white vessel as analogous to the Asian American female body, thinking about the very racialized surface of the glaze pattern, this oriental object, the conflation of objectification with personhood, as well as reclaiming, recontextualizing this vessel through the act of beading around it. So I use cotton thread and glass seed beads, and I bead around the vessels. I'm interested in the interaction that occurs with the beads over the glaze patterns, this distortion, this blurring, the pixelation that occurs as a way, as I said, to reclaim, recontextualize these very oriental objects. And so in the sculpture on the right, it's actually 2 separate vases that I sourced off eBay from different sellers. And I started finding these duplicates, triplicates. I have maybe, I think, like 6 of the same shape of vessel from the same factory in China that's actually only a few hours from where I was born. And it felt really important to bring these vases back together after, I think, like 70 years apart, and think of ways that they can interact with one another. So I see these 2 as reuniting, as I kind of call this series like sister vases, and I kind of imagine that they are talking with one another. And then this larger vase is a series that I've been working on a lot while I've been here at the Craft Center, and it's inspired by this phrase, "I bleed red, white, and blue." And I'm thinking about Asian Americans being seen as perpetual foreigners. And even though this vase is now red, white, and blue, it still very much remains an Oriental object, despite having the color palette of Americana. And so that's what I've been working on here. And I encourage you, if you do take a closer look, to see if you can peer into the vase, because I do think that the interior of the vessel is also just as important as the exterior.
Should we turn it over to questions, right? Sure. Does anyone have any questions for Katie? Okay, cool. We're going to move on. Sorry. I'm going to quickly move on to Dominique. So, sorry, this space is awkward. So Dominique is our current Houston Center for Photography and the Craft Center resident. He's been here for 3 months from June 2026, and then he'll be here until the end of August. He's currently in the 3rd studio, so feel free to talk to him after this walkthrough as well, and I'll turn it over to him.
Cool. Thank you. Hello, everybody. Sorry, I keep thinking this is a microphone. It's not, I mean, it is, but for the camera. My name is Dominique. I'm a Guatemalan American visual artist. I come into art through photography, mainly. So one of my pieces is actually right by over here, more photographic. And I started investigating like domestic space within my practice a few years ago when I returned to grad school, and looking at the objects within my house, my grandma's house, and the kind of objects I grew up around. And what really called my attention were my childhood blankets and the different textiles that my grandmother brought with her when she migrated from Guatemala to the United States, specifically to DC in the 80s. And I was using my blankets, my childhood blankets, as like backdrops for my portraits and my work. And there was something that didn't feel right about just like using them as like stiff backdrops. And so I started photographing them, printing out those images, cutting up those images and reweaving them in new directions, and really thinking about how cultural traditions kind of change and take new shape through migration practices, and also as generations of like my family kind of grow and evolve, and those kind of traditions just like get warped in new ways. I also see it as like a queer gesture, and the way that I maybe should have, there's like ways I should have been like following a tradition, but I, have gone against that, and like there's like a slant to the way that like I move within the world. And so these new patterns, these new textures that get made from that, it's something that gets echoed throughout my work. So as you can see, I've also been I use photographic processes in the work and these other sculptural pieces that I'm making. So the patterns you see are all getting retranslated from these rewoven, or what I like to call as remixed patterns. Remixed culture is something I really like embrace, as something that you get to sample something, pull it into like a new life, and then give it a new form, extend its life in a new way. And so these rewoven patterns, using Sanotype process, which is like a light sensitive solution, I soak material with it and expose those materials with those patterns, and then make these sculptural gestures. So this one's called Boulder Bundle Gift. I was thinking about ideas of like running away, also the idea of like an unexpected child. My mom had me at 17. She was not expecting to have me. And so it feels like this like anchor that kind of like grounded her in this place. And silk specifically recalls my mother and my brother, because when they were little, they couldn't fall asleep unless they were touching silk. And so I think about like dreaming in that way, as like these materials that they were allow them to dream and enter these like new realms. The piece to the left of that is called Dream Vessel, where I'm taking thrifted bed sheets and exposing those also to Sanotype and new patterns, and using them to make these like soft vessels that kind of like fall on itself, have these like limps, and they curve, and they're not necessarily like sturdy, but I enjoy those elements about it. And you'll notice the peacock feathers in both these pieces. They are a motif that I use throughout my practice as this way to talk about masculinity, and specifically within like a Latinx idea of masculinity and toxic masculinity, and how this more feminine version of that, and embracing more of like color and excess, especially within my culture. There's lots of colors and like spice and flavor, even the way we speak and dance and move. And so it's like a reclamation of those practices and that culture, and a way to like fight against ideas of like minimalism, which sometimes is like considered a hierarchy within art. And so I love to like use pattern as wallpaper within my practice. But yeah, that's kind of a little bit about my work and how I think about making. Yeah. Does anyone have any questions?
Is the wallpaper pattern created by you?
Yeah, so it was this textile that my uncle brought from Guatemala, and he was actually going to throw it away. And I was like, don't throw that away. Why? He's like, I just don't. And I think a lot of like assimilation, the way that like they try to like remove stuff that was like old to them, and they like my family specifically like, and then bring stuff that's like more modern or contemporary, and specifically within the United States, like what is deemed as like acceptable or like good art. And so I thought it was really funny he was gonna throw this away. So I photograph it, cut it up, the image, reweave it, and find ways to just like, bring it back to life.
I have a question that pertains to both Katie and Dominique. I was wondering if you could comment a little bit about the kind of like anthropomorphic quality of the vessels in each of your work. Like that's kind of like contrapposto, and it's like I feel like it is a little bit reminiscent of like kind of like portraiture and like the pose. And Katie, yours like there's something interesting about the kind of like obscured pixelation of the surface, and like I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that kind of like umbilical cord.
Yeah. It's really interesting. Actually, I've never thought about portraiture and the ideas of like the contrapposto stance of the vase, but a lot of my photographs, I look at the history of portraiture within my work and kind of the way the camera was used to categorize and catalog communities when the camera was first invented. And so portraiture is constantly in my mind, but body and gesture and the shape and like, I think like the slouchiness, it kind of feels like a little, I use the word pathetic, but like in a very like proud way where it's like, it wants to be this, but it really can't. And it's also trying to relax, and just like slouch and like be itself. But yeah, that's really interesting to think about portraiture. I'm going to pass the mic over to Katie.
Back in the hot seat. So I was reading this book called Ornamentalism by Anne Anlin Chang, and she writes that ornament is flesh for Asian American female personhood. And how I interpreted that was like the way that we decorate ourselves, the way we ornament ourselves can signify our race just as much as the color of our skin. And so I was thinking of the blue and white vessel as analogous to my own body, and then ways that I can, I guess, like reclaim it and make it my own. And then also thinking about the very like binary nature of the cobalt glaze on the white porcelain, and the way that the beads blur that. And so now it's no longer just blue and white. There's like now a third space, and I'm thinking about Homi Bhabha's like third space, the space between cultures, the space between here and there. It's a very like dynamic, hybrid, active, abstract place that a lot of people within a diaspora exist in. So I was thinking a lot about the way that the beads can, I guess, have this ability to talk about third space, to talk about ornamentation and decoration.
If there aren't any other questions, I think we'll move on. Does anyone have any other questions about Dominique or Katie's work? Okay, cool. Let me quickly introduce. Oh, sorry.
I'm not confused, but intrigued. I mean, you have two pieces over there, but the setup is one. Mm-hmm. So is that on purpose, or I don't understand really. Let's say somebody wants to buy the whole thing, they need to buy the two, or is it always have to be one with the other, or it's just coincidence or space?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just mainly space, the way they're configured in the gallery in the hallway. I also kind of like the way the pedestal isn't like a traditional square pedestal, and it has this like polygon shape to it, so it's like irregular. It's outside of the tradition of like the gallery space, and also like you said, like usually there's only like one object per pedestal or thing, but like breaking that and having things live together like a home, and there's like a shelf and there's like multiple things that just allow them to like live. And they both were made at very different times, like maybe 2 years apart from each other, so they come, I think, from like a different mindset, but I think they get to coexist together as ideas of like being and bodies, and they get to keep each other company.
Yeah. Even though the background is like square, I see it as in my mind, I see the reflection of the base of the shelf, like even, right? Because there's small one and then the big one, so you could, I don't know. Just,
Yeah. I also, yeah, like the way the shadows work with the white
Yeah.
square in the back. It's nice.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so
What
much.
is that?
Oh, this is a mic.
I don't think that's working.
Oh, no, for the camera, yeah. Yes.
What's next in your career for both of you? or what do you hope to achieve by this year?
What do I hope to achieve?
Yes.
Should I take
Sure. I don't know if it's working.
Well, I'm planning on, well, my residency ends in a month, so immediately just going to be in the studio as much as I can while I'm still here and soaking up as much Houston time as possible. I recently signed with a gallery that's based in Austin and Sun Valley, so that's exciting. So I'll have roots to Texas no matter where I go, which is really important to me. But yeah, just gonna continue making and researching as much as I can.
At the end of my residency, I'm heading back to Virginia, where I'm from, and a month after that, I'm heading to another residency at the Lighthouse Works. It's on Fisher Island off of New York, closer to Connecticut. So I'll be doing another residency out there, focusing on thinking about like the history of like trade around the island and water movement, and trying to use Sanotype again to make more collaborative community archives of other childhood blankets from the residents there.
Thank you all for those thoughtful questions. I'm going to quickly introduce Roslyn. Roslyn Dupré is a conceptual artist, and she was here during her residency from December 2025 to February 2026. And her work is really awesome. I'm going to just pass it over.
Thank you, Zaynab. I'm Roslyn, and my work is heavily invested in the intersections of materiality, process, and concept. And so what you see in front of you is one of my word maps. It's just an ongoing body of work that I've been building. They're all, in some ways, sculptural objects that come from the translation of excerpts of conversation, excerpts from books or poems or songs, usually of more than two or more voices, that I then grid, plot, and sew. And in the process of the sewing and the plotting, the paper gets distressed as it travels underneath my needle and through the throat of my sewing machine. And it produces its own sort of sculptural object, its own formal language that derives from this attempt, like the personal experiences of whatever it was that I was listening to or whoever I was speaking to or whatever was recorded. But it has now been so somatically erased by the process that I'm left with something that really has no connection or very tenuous connection to the thing it once was. What I'm doing is a lot around language, where I'm thinking about that desire to transform the things around us into understandable concepts, or to break them down into smaller packets, and sort of actually applying that process to the words and to these things that I'm grasping at or that once had meaning to me. And then in the end, I'm left with this thing that's kind of a husk, a little shell of what it once was, that can exist on its own, and it has its own new history or its own new formal properties. When I was in residence here at Craft, it was a great time. I loved being here. I brought my floor loom into my studio, so I could really spend time investigating this desire to work with and to and from the grid. You know, the grid has this really kind of lofty place in contemporary art, where we've gone from the times of Rosalind Krauss thinking about, oh, are we erasing all meaning and letting art just be art and reference nothing in our lived experience world to this kind of understanding that it's just another tool for breaking down and understanding our lived experiences. And so I use my weavings as a way of creating its own grids. A lot of times I am weaving with hyper-local materials, things that are specific to my life or to this place. Right now I'm doing a lot of weaving with Spanish moss. It was something that I started doing here. And it's just this idea that I'm going to keep building on these local, personal materials that kind of signify that we're here now, we're of this place, of this time, but then kind of transform them into something new and of its own being. Any questions?
I do have a question. So when I was showing folks and talking more about this work, a lot of people were telling me that it's like reminiscent of a crossword, but then also like a map, and it is like, like the title says, a word map. But with the arrows and stuff, could you talk more about like, it kind of reads like, you're going somewhere. Could you share more about like why the arrows and what inspired you to kind of have it more directional?
Sure. The arrows are part of that somatic process that I was talking about. And by that, I mean taking a physical action to remove meaning or emotion from something. So when I choose an excerpt or a document or something that I'm grabbing for and trying to spend time with, in the process, I'm then graphing out what those words look like. I'm looking at the risers and the drops on letters, and kind of if you looked at a paragraph and you focus out and you can't read the words but you can still see the shapes, and then I draw them on my grids with messages to myself about how the machine is supposed to behave, what I'm planning, I'm plotting ahead for what's going to happen with the machine. I try to do them in long runs, long circular runs, so that the words are kind of lassoed with the thread of my machine. I'm lifting the needle, or I'm leaving the needle and turning the paper underneath, and that's what's crumpling the paper as I go. And these arrows are my little directives to myself as I'm working. And they're also a record of not only the process, but where the process failed. So there are marks there that tell me like, oh, I did something wrong, or the machine, a thread broke, I ran out of a thread, the paper tore. And so it becomes this record where the words and what was originally important gets lost in the process of this erasure that I'm performing.
I have a question.
Yes.
So this is the only piece of your work that I've seen. So I was wondering if you're talking about dialogue or things that you read, do you have a number of words that you can fit in your work? I mean, like you have like a limit that you already know how many words you're going to be working with?
No, because when I'm choosing what I'm doing, that'll dictate which paper I'm gravitating towards or what medium I'm gravitating towards. So some of my works are quite large. Other times, quite often, the tenor of the language that I'm translating is helping inform my decision making. So it might lead to something that's more congested. It might lead to something that's more free-flowing and open. The form ends up being a physical representation of what the context might have originally been. But it's only like a whisper, it's a vapor of what once was. Yeah, thank you.
By the way, I don't see it as a grid. I see it like a circuit board. Like something is going somewhere. And
Thank you. Yeah. I get circuit boards. I get architectural schematic maps. Sometimes people see them as scores, musical scores. And I like that they kind of tempt us to read or understand them or make sense of them, because that's the little spot that I'm dealing with. I've lived overseas quite a lot in languages, in cultures where I didn't speak the language and I didn't know the alphabet. And you know, that feeling of walking around someplace where you're not a native and you're like, you have this hunger anytime you see a banner or a sign, and you're like, you feel you should read this. I feel like because I've spent a lot of time in that zone, that's what I'm recreating with the work.
Thank you so much, Rosalind. I'm gonna start talking about Mulaney's work now. So Mulaney Janaba Barnett, she was here from March through May 2026. And with this work specifically, it was inspired by a trip that she took to Portugal, where she saw that they had these like large ceramic tiles all over interior spaces. And the first half would be like some portraiture, with the bottom half being more decorative or ornamental tile work. So with her background being part Portuguese, she wanted to kind of reclaim that, especially like with her West African and Caribbean cultures. So she wanted to honor her matriarchal side, specifically like her grandmother who helped raise her and all of the people on her mother's side. So these are like screen printed images on the tiles of her family and all the archival images. And then it says in Fulani, which is an West African language, "Dear Mom," over and over again, thinking about, you know, the women who raised her in her life and that importance. And then over here with these ceramics, they're referencing West African textiles, specifically like Adinkra quilts. And she's kind of like marrying all of this work and reclaiming it through the inspired lens of like Portuguese ceramic work. But yeah, does anyone have any questions? Okay, we're gonna move on to Lorena's work. So Lorena Morales was here for around 6 months, from September 2025 to February 2026. And her lens was very much shaped by the community, and I'll turn it over to her.
Hello, thank you for being here today. All my work is related to home and how our perception of home changes over time. I am interested in researching the psychological and metaphorical aspects of home. I will read a little about this, and then I will explain what is this coming from. Suspended Memories is the title of the installation, focuses specifically on capturing and preserving moments of joy, warmth, and belonging. While the concept of displacement could sometimes feel like heavy and melancholic, with this installation, I am intentionally shaping a narrative around resiliency and celebration. I want to highlight the beautiful, comforting places of a person's history that they actively choose to carry with them into a new chapter of life. So during my residency here, that was from September to February, that was a 6-month residency, I was focused on a community installation. So as a result of that, I was able to record over 400 joyful memories from the community. We made an installation. I say we made, we did it with the help of the community. House 10 by 12 by 12 house made with beads, with a string of beads. So for that process, the idea was to welcoming people into my studio and then invite them to sit and relax. And while they do the reading process, to reflect about the meaning of home for them. When each person finished, I asked them to share with me a joyful memory related to that concept of home. The installation at the end was a multisensorial installation, include, of course, all the senses, include the taste, and the sound were the recording voices of everyone. So when you enter this house made of beads, you will listen to all these recording memories. So this is like the continuation of that installation. What you can read here around of each house, they are some of the memories that were shared. So I called the installation suspended memories, but also could be borrowed memories, but because they belong to somebody else. With this installation, I am talking about the fragility of the memory and also the fragmented quality of memories. With the use of this material, like paper, that is also kind of, can be tear or over time can be damaged, or maybe the letters could be fade. So it's like this idea that I have by preserving those memories, but also the risk that they could be lost over time. And I see this as a floating neighborhood of a celebration. So the idea of using all the laces and all these vines is with this idea of how we decorate our homes when we celebrate, connecting with this idea of the joyful memories. And also, well, there are many memories that also connected with grandmothers, mothers, or grandfathers visitings. So that is the reason that some of them has more laces using, also to connect to that. Some of them, like this one, is like I wanted to do it like a marine finish because it's talking about a memory of a boat that is was shared by Roslyn, and there are two memories here. And then I tried like to also to relate every material I use to the memories I was writing about. Yes.
Does anyone have any questions for Lorena? Sorry. I wanted to quickly share something that you briefly touched on, was like with the beads specifically, you dyed them using like materials and ingredients that people would find in their home. So it would be like not cumin, sorry. Yeah. I don't know why I thought about that. Turmeric, yeah. Elderberry, hibiscus, coffee. So that was also another way that you tied in home, and you also incorporated those beads in this installation. Yes. But yeah, sorry. Did anyone have any questions?
Okay, I'm gonna. How did you choose these memories? What was your criteria from 400 and something that you recorded?
Okay, because I want to be really objective and not fall into, favoritism. I did it randomly, and mostly I did it by timing because they were recording. So what I figured out is like each house, the memory to have, there is one house that has one memory, and that lasts 1 minute. So I was working in, there are some houses that they are like 3 memories, they are 20 seconds length each one, and there are like 2, and they are like 30 seconds each one. So I was working mostly based on timing of the shared memory, and also talking about the fragmented part of the memory. So that is the reason I decide most of them, they are 2 or 3 memories getting together.
Another question. Why do some houses have one hanging ornament and some have more?
Because they are related to the memory that is right in there. Yes, yes. And then, and of course, as you can see, they have the beads. These are some connected to the beads I use for the installation that we have at the garden for 6 months there, 6 weeks, sorry. And then you can see some of them are, like the yellow ones, are dyed with turmeric. This is coffee. This is more an original color. This is the blue one is with indigo. The another is elderberry. So I try also to bring some of that installation to here to connect both artworks, not only by the chair memories, but also by the materials I use. Also in the installation, that was the ceiling was filled with crystals, and that is also the idea to bring the crystal, because I see the crystals also, that connection to the memories of those chandeliers that maybe we grow up with, but also they are also connected to good vibes, a good energy, because we are talking about joy, is my way also to reinforce that idea.
Thank you so much, Lorena. I'm going to quickly share more about Grace's work. So Grace Sachi Troxel was a resident, I believe, from December 2025 through February 2026. And with this work specifically, she's been touching on tradition, loss, memory, and grief. Over here, she has 75 years that have been casted from her father, signifying each year that he's lived. So this was one of the works that she was working on at the craft center, working through that grief. And they're actually raku fired. So that was a tradition. That was a technique that her father taught her. So her father was also a ceramicist. She comes from a line of Dutch and Japanese ceramicists. But yeah, so she fired all of these ears in the raku process, and her father, her father actually taught her how to work with ceramics, and they both went to Japan, herself as a student and her father as a teacher for a program, which was really nice. So yeah, she was basically making more of these ears during her residency, working through all of that difficulty and loss. And then over here on this sculpture, she calls it Obon lantern, and it's part of a Buddhist tradition to make a lantern in remembrance of someone and let it lift off into the air, thinking about the person, and kind of working through that. So this tradition happens, it's a Buddhist tradition, it happens once every year. Does anyone have any questions about Grace's work?
Can you repeat how she made the ears?
Yes, so a lot of her work is basically casting body parts of her family, and also deformed vegetables, because she's always thinking about deterioration, loss, aging, and the different parts of what that looks like. So when her father passed away, as a way to remember him, she casted each of his ears. And then from that casting, she was able to basically make it's like a mold. So she was able to make more of the ears of his work, or this work, yeah. Thank you, guys. Okay, then I'm gonna move on to Candace's work. Candace has 2 series of work over here. The one on the left started around the pandemic era when she was having kind of like a writer's block. So she worked through that and kind of signified what an empty page could look like, and started reimagining basically the page coming alive at her, and that kind of helped her work through this artist block. This is in a series of 400. She works very fast, and she's a very diligent artist. But yeah, so this is in the series of 400, and she's going to continue working on this. And then over here we have her Google Books Ingram Viewer series, and with this, she basically looks at how often these specific words come up in in books, according to the Google Books Ingram Viewer. So you can see over here, Christian had a really nice influx, specifically from the 1800s all the way until the late 1900s, with it kind of keeping steady in the 2000s, with climate denial also taking a quick uptick in 2000. Pro-life starts taking an uptick in 2000, but then since 2020, it's been taking a downtick, and then she wanted to include vaginal dryness as a way to kind of incorporate random subjects that you wouldn't necessarily think of. And then it starts to take off in the 1980s and has been slowly been talked about more, which is important, since 2020. Does anyone have any questions about her work?
Is her work always related to notebooks and statistics?
Yeah, so she works specifically, like she does all the hand embroidering herself, and she works and is inspired by like a lot of research, materials, books, and she actually hand makes a lot of artist books. So she focuses on one subject and then starts doing all the research and basically hand threads all of the text that she has onto that book.
Is it all wood?
Yeah, so it's on linen, and then the backing is of wood, yeah.
And is this the same format, or she goes?
She's been, during her residency here, she started upscaling her work, and she's working with like foam and trying to figure out how big she could make the work and trying to play around with that. So
you can control it if you start blowing it up.
exactly, yeah. So with the memory foam, she was saying that it was like kind of like caving in, and she wants to like see if she likes that, and or she wants to like incorporate more wood for like a sturdier canvas. But yeah, I'm really excited to see this grow. Yes.
A question. So, like many of the works on this side of the installation are related to kind of like research and words and language. And I was wondering, like Rosalind, and you know, like did you overlap with Mulaney or Candace, and did you ever talk about did your works influence each other at all, or your research?
I overlapped with both Grace, who did this beautiful installation of the death cast of her dad's ears, and with Lorena. So my colleagues, and Katie, who is at the other end. So we had lots of conversations, and I'm sure we subtly influenced each other, but maybe not in ways that we 100% understand or know yet.
Yeah, I agree. That's another thing that I love with the residency program. It's like you pick up on these themes that a lot of the artists are thinking about, and it's kind of hard to tell if they're thinking, if like you guys are thinking about it like all together, or it's like also with the different durations of the residency, you know, like with your work, and then also like Mulaney's, it's like you guys are both thinking about words and text and things in like different abstract ways, but your residencies were completely like not months apart, but months apart, you know.
Yeah, I think Mulaney, the kind of interesting thing is Mulaney took over I was in this studio where Dominique is now, and so I feel like maybe there is this like lineage or like kind of contagion of space, of magic. That we're all like, I've gotten from the people who came before me, and maybe I'm adding to.
Right. But yeah, I'm going to quickly share about Kendall Ross's work. She is a knitter who basically has this maternal line of knitters, with her grandma being a knitter, her mother being a knitter, and then herself learning. She knits about personal encounters, stories, and delves into identity, memory, and gender. Specifically with a lot of her work, she's thinking about craft versus art, in air quotes, with a lot of people and conversations informing her work, with different interactions of people being like, oh, this is so cool, but it's not fine art, and things along those lines. So over here, she's going into personal emotions, thinking about, it says over here, I remember thinking it would change once I didn't feel so much shame. And yeah, her work goes into like different politics of the garments, installation, knitting, especially as a way of resistance, specifically inspired and influenced by the World War II knitting era. And yeah, does anyone have any questions about Kendall's work?
Was that done in one piece, or 4 and stick together, or 7 and stick together?
I'm not specifically familiar with this work because she works very fast as well, similar to Candace, but this work was done ahead of time in 2024. But from the way that it looks, like you're saying, they're all added together once each vest is done, and then the sleeves are attached. Does anyone else have any questions?
Yeah, I have a
Yes.
similar question along the same line. Is there an opening in the back anywhere?
No, it's closed all the way through, so the opening are just from the sleeves and the neck. Thank you guys so much for joining me for the walkthrough. So yeah, by grounding their work in research, inherited tradition, material language, this cohort of exhibiting artists reveal how craft can hold memories, narratives, connections across culture and time. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.